Going live. You're live.
Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. And this is Melody. Say hi.
Hi.
She's a little excited because it is her birthday.
Okay.
And, what?
I think you're a little out of focus.
Am I out of focus?
Just a little.
Okay. Well, it is Melody's birthday, and so I figured she could come down to the live tonight and have a little bit of fun with us. And I'm going to try and put her in focus, even though she's going to
Oh, that's better.
Place. So tonight we're going to be doing a Q&A, so if you have any questions for me or if you have any questions for Melody, go ahead and throw those in here. And if any of you don't know, Melody actually has two of her own YouTube channels. She has one that's Woodworking, Melody's Workbench, and then she has one that is Go Princess, which is her own invention of her own fun things. And if you want to see them, there's links to them down below. So I guess this is a collab with me and Melody. So, yeah, we're going to have a little bit of fun tonight and kind of mess around and see what we've got. If you have anything,
So funny.
if you can tell she's excited. If you have any questions for either of us, let us know. Now, I did have one question come in earlier, and now I got to remember what it was. But, yeah, if you do have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat.
Is it in the chat or was it prior to the chat?
It was prior to the chat. I'll remember in just a moment. And if you are watching this recorded, then go ahead and look down in the description, and there'll be a bunch of timestamps down there that get you roughly close to where the question was asked. So Sarah will be recording those. Oh, that's what it was. I did a video on the second channel here talking through different grades of planes. So I had the Harbor Freight. I had the... Where'd those go? Can you hand me those two planes over there, Melody? So I had the Harbor Freight. I had the Tay Tools.
Be careful.
Then I had the Stanley and a Veritas. And I had a lot of people asking me about other brands out there. And there are lots of other brands, and particularly Wood River. Wood River is kind of in that gray area. It's a really nice plane. And I would put it at the high end of the mid-grade planes. I don't quite consider that one to be to be a really high-end plane. It is more expensive than most of your mid-grade planes, but you are going to be getting a little bit better plane for it. Actually, a much better plane for it. It's a very, very nice plane. Yeah, I don't quite consider it to be in the high-end because it's not quite as nice. Then there's a bunch of other ones like Bridge City? No, that's wrong. Bridge something. Someone in the comments will correct me. And then you have the... I forgot their name. It's Spears. No, they make infill planes. Drive me bonkers. But I mean, you're totally looking at planes that are in the thousands of dollars. And those are like the above premium. And so I didn't talk about those because if you're looking for one of those above premium planes, you know about them and you know what they're worth. And you don't need to talk about them. So, but that was one question that came up quite a bit, and I wanted to answer that right off the bat. So, Melody, what are you working on right now?
Right now I'm working on a happy birthday sign.
A happy birthday sign? Show us where your happy birthday sign is.
Oh.
So what did you do to it so far?
So we've already got it cut and glued together.
Uh-huh.
She just doesn't know what you're doing.
So we're going to put... So I've just got to print out a piece of paper, carve out happy birthday, and then I'm going to put a dowel in, and it'll be a little happy birthday sign.
And why are you making a happy birthday sign?
Because, well, in celebration of my birthday.
Of course, you got to make a happy birthday sign for your own birthday.
It's for...
But she's the one who wants to do the carving on it, so this should be a little bit of fun.
I've seen you did many carvings on wood.
Yeah.
Hey.
What's that?
Does she want to take her retainer out?
Do you want to take them out?
Sure.
You can set them right
I was
here.
say maybe. I don't know if you want to do it on camera, but...
Yeah, no braces.
So,
that's easier for you.
do you have any questions, or I'll move on to...
Melody has a question from
What's
Bryan
that?
Fulmer. So from your point of view, Melody,
Mm-hmm.
what about woodworking is fun or not so fun so that he can get his daughters excited about woodworking?
Well, what I like about woodworking is that you get to use your imagination on building stuff. One thing that there's some stuff that I don't
As I say,
really
she's looking at the wrong camera.
is that it takes quite wait a bit of time. I'm not a very good patience girl. But I do love woodworking.
Hey, Melody, we're looking at that.
We're at this camera, honey.
Really?
I know, we're not cameras.
So what's your favorite thing about it, though?
I like the sign because I like mainly almost everything. I like to saw, chisel. It just feels easy for me. I've been doing it for 3 years. Now 4 years. Because I'm 10. Started ever since I was 6.
No, I like to. I kind of use the same principle for me is I only make things that I want to make. And so for the kids, I like to kind of either I will encourage them about something. Hey, here's a birdhouse. You want to make a birdhouse with me? Yeah. She's already fallen for that one already. But a lot of times she'll come to me with ideas that are like, oh, totally outlandish. Like you wanted to make an entire house for you and your dolls. And so then we decided to try scaling that back to let's make a bunk bed for your dolls.
That was a very creative bunk bed out of shoe boxes, I have to say.
Like Daisy did. She gave me the idea. She told me that you can make anything out of just a couple of home things. Just using your imagination.
What else we got?
Let's see. Brian asked, what is she going to use to carve?
She's going to use my tools.
I hope so. But is she going to use your Nerix chisels, or is she going to?
No, she'll use my good file chisels. She's done. If you actually go to her channel, Melody's Workbench, she has several things on there. She's done some carving. And if you want to see her channels, they're in the description down below. So the links to them there. Oh, sorry, I forgot to pull that keyboard out.
Yeah, I noticed it was a little clickety clackety.
Any other questions, or am I?
Well, Dad Gamet says, Melody, happy birthday. What tool did your dad get you that he needed?
I got every tool that I need. And also what Dad would need to woodwork.
Oh, so Daddy doesn't need any more tools?
Dude, well, he can get more of what he's already have.
It's about the way it works, yeah.
Melody, I gotta train you better.
Yeah, I'm finishing up the drawers for the desk, and so I've been having a little bit of fun with this and did the drawer pulls on this. So this will be Saturday's video of all of the glue up on the dovetail, and I'm really looking forward to this. So I got this, which is a docking drawer. So you actually put this in the back of the drawer, and it's got this fold out thing. So as the drawer comes in and out, it keeps electricity. So I can actually plug in things in the drawer, and that way I can put my phone in there and close the drawer and not distract myself. And I'll even let you put it in there, babe.
What am I putting in there?
Your phone, so it doesn't distract you.
I'd have to be home.
But these were a lot of fun to glue up, and they're all solid bottom, solid oak on all sides, and rather beefy. So I'm looking forward to getting those in. So hopefully Saturday's video will be about this far, and then next Saturday will be the all finish up on it. So we've got a few other things to do, but yeah, this should be interesting.
So,
what's that?
Melody, what do you think Daddy should work on next?
After the drawers, I think you should work on making.
What should I make? Should I make a floating coffee table? I've got an anchor that I'm working on. I'm restoring a 150-year-old anchor beam. That should be kind of fun. Let's see, what other things do I have coming up? I have a curved piece of trim for above a window. I've got a floating coffee table. I've got the shelf that will go above the desk so we can put the printer stuff up there. I think that's all that's on the list right now, though. I've got a few other things coming up.
Yeah, I love how my side of the desk has been
You haven't been there to
Catch.
claim it.
No, I have not. I have been in my second home that I
Yes.
wish
And
for it
those of
to
you who
no
don't
longer
know,
be.
Sarah has been, she's a nurse, so she was at the hospital all the time. And now her mother went and got a new heart. So she just went through heart transplant and is in the hospital. So Sarah's driving up to Madison every day. So she's driving an hour and a half up there and an hour and a half down every day. So it's been kind of a fun month.
So if the keyboard starts becoming garbly goop.
If you suddenly see her go thunk, you understand.
Oh, we have another question for Melody.
What's that?
Harold Schultz says, "Happy birthday, Melody. Do you have a favorite brand of tool?"
Ooh.
Do you know what that means?
Not quite. I haven't learned.
The favorite company? I don't think you do. Probably Stanley, because that's what most of your tools are.
How about what is your favorite tool?
My favorite tool would be the saw because it's mainly the easiest tool you can use. You just gotta rub it up again. You just gotta go against wood. It's super easy. Super easy.
This is one of the great things about Harbor Freight. Is you can get these cheap tools, give them to the kids, and when they drop them on the concrete, oh well. But she still has fun with it. So, and she can cut a fairly straight line.
Get the instincts from you.
All
Yeah,
right.
what?
None.
So Bryan Fulmer said, "What about the backyard project? Which one is Melody's favorite?"
Ooh.
What have we made in the backyard this year?
Well, we made this summer thing which keeps us cool in the summer. We made some.
Pergola.
We made a pergola, a tree fort. We put together a shed.
Put up the pool.
And we made some forts back in the woods.
Yeah. It's always fun playing back in the woods and letting the kids go build stuff with tree limbs and whatnot. What questions we got?
All right.
If you guys have any woodworking
Hang
questions,
on.
go ahead and throw them in there. We'll get
Yep.
to as many as we can today.
We got Kenny, and I have to ask for clarification if it's Anjetta or Anjet. I don't know. You really need to tell me so I can pronounce it correctly because I ask questions all the time. How often do you use any of the molding planes on the upper shelf of the tool wall?
I don't use them that much. I don't do much molding. It's just not my style. I like chamfers. I like clean edges. I like a live edge, and so I don't do a whole lot of standard molding. Every now and then I'll have a bead, and so I have a couple beading planes I'll pull down. The tongue and groove planes I'll use quite a bit. But yeah, most of the molding planes I've rarely used. I'd say about half of these main ones here I've never actually used. Just haven't had a reason to. Either that or I would actually rather use a Stanley 55 than the molding plane. But yeah, I mean the ones over here I use quite a bit. I have my the shoulder plane I made, my rabbit plane, moving philister, grooving plane, the coffin plane I use quite a bit, and then these are my. I'm having mind blanks here today. Spill planes. So I have a minor collection of spill planes, and maybe one of these days I'll increase that collection. But we'll see. Are you having fun, Mel?
Yeah.
Do you want to go sit by mommy?
Dancing to the music in her head.
Go sit by mommy.
You want to come read this question?
Sure thing, Mom.
Don't put it there. Just so, yeah, that's good.
Here.
Welcome to the noises.
All right. So this one
And
right
it's
here.
her birthday, so that's why we're
Dennis
here be down here tonight.
Meko.
Yep.
If filling gaps in dovetail with strips of wood, do you glue them in with the glue first
First glue up.
glue up, or glue them after it is dried as the second glue up?
I actually don't fill the gaps in my dovetails. So let me find some that have gaps on them. This one, yeah, this one's got a couple of gaps in it. Like one I cut on the wrong side of the saw. So I'm going to show you my dovetail gaps. Get this one down in here. And let's zoom in right here. So here you can see. Oh yes. Here, I'll grab this thing, point to it. So here I've got, and they don't show up quite as well, but here I've got about a little less than a 1/16 of an inch gap. Let's focus on that better. Here we go. Got a bit of a 1/16 of an inch gap in here, and I'm going to leave that alone. I don't want to actually fill that at all. This one back here, I've got gap space here because I cut several of these pin bays too deep, and so I'm not going to mess with those because I actually like to leave my gaps. I like to see my mistakes. I like to learn from those things, and so if you come and look at it in my furniture, I don't cover them up. I don't fill anything like that. I kind of like to see that aesthetic. It's something that says that was not machine made. But I mean, if you do want to fill them up, usually the way I do it is after the glue up. So like right now, I would glue it up and I realize there's gaps there. Then what I'm going to do is I will get my splinters of wood and shove them in there and hit them with a little CA and plane them down. And the gap filling does not need to be structural, and so just filling them with a little bit of CA is perfectly fine. It's quick, it's easy, and you can move on to the next step. So that's usually what I would suggest people do, but I would actually say, why gap fill? So think about it. It's just my opinion. What's next?
All right, here, I'm gonna try to bring. Can I bring this to our melody?
What's that?
I'm trying to make this so melody can read it.
Oh, the questions?
Oh boy.
Maybe.
Oh boy.
All right, so
Which one?
this highlighted one.
Perez
You gotta speak up, Melody.
Hernandez.
What saw files do you need to sharpen heavy work saws?
You just need a bigger file. Unless you're talking about big crosscut saws like you have your timber saws, you get a triangular shaped file, and they're not actually triangular. They're actually a hexagonal, six-sided, but they look triangular. So let me show you what we got here. So this is a fairly large one, and so you can see how it's triangular, but the points have a very, very, very small edge on them. And so that way when you cut the gullet, you're not getting a sharp point in the end. You're actually getting a little bit of rounded edge, but it's these triangular files. And so for a bigger saw, you just get a bigger file. And the way you can tell what file is you take your triangular file and you put it into the gullet of the saw blade. And if the saw teeth come up halfway on the file, if they just get to halfway, then the file is okay. If they go past halfway on the face of the file, then you need a bigger saw file. And so the reason for that is if your teeth come up past halfway on the face of the file, and then you rotate the file, the next tooth is going to come up past halfway, and you're going to wear out the middle of your file faster than you're wearing out the corners. And so you're going to ruin your files twice as fast. And so that's the only reason why you don't want it, why you want it to be bigger. And so usually, I mean, if you look at the ones I have here, they all have specified sizes and specified size names. Go back over to this. And so here you can see you have the needle file, you have the 4-inch double slim, the 5-inch double slim, the 6-inch double slim, the 6-inch slim, the 6-inch 1X slim, the 6-inch slim, the 7 slim, the 7 regular, And those names mean absolutely nothing. You'll find people who will tell you, oh, you've got to get a 6 slim for this particular saw. Don't worry about that. Just go out and grab the triangular file and fit it in there and see if it fits. And that lets you know what size you need. So bigger the tooth is, the bigger the triangle you're going to need. Hope that answers your question. What else we got?
All right. You want to read another one, or you want me to read it?
Sure.
No.
Jordan Haynie.
Jonathan Haynie.
Jonathan Haynie.
Hey, Jonathan.
Asked, where did you get the hardware from your frame saw?
The hardware for my frame saw. So this one is actually from Blackburn Toolworks. He's out in Pennsylvania. He actually lives just a few miles away from where I used to live. And he offers it in 3 different sizes. I think it's 24, 36, and 48 inches. The one I have is the 30-inch style, a 36-inch style. And for 90% of what I do, that's perfectly fine. If I'm going to be going much more than like 12-inch wide, I probably want to go up to the 4-foot. But I haven't done much that I'm like, ooh, man, I wish I had the 4-foot. Because the 36 is just it's a nice stroke feel. You're not moving much more than that. There are a lot of people out there who like the larger 48, but that's my favorite. So yeah, Blackburn Toolworks. He sells a lot of saw kits. And I'm thinking about doing one of his here soon. Though I haven't heard much from him lately. I gotta give him a call. So, yeah. What's next, Mel?
You ready?
Eddie G asked, do you have any recommendations on buying a saw set tool, especially for high TPI saws, such as a 14 TPI dovetail saw?
Thank you, Mel. No, saw set tools, there are so many different styles out there and so many different types. Everyone has a different style, everyone has something they like, and I have, 5 or 6 of them here, and I use them all interchangeably, and I don't really find one that I'm like, ooh, this one's better than that one. When it comes down to the TPI of the saw, it all depends on the size of the hammer. The smaller the hammer, the smaller the tooth that can make contact. So if you're using a big tooth on if you're using a big saw set on small teeth, the hammer might be too large and it'd be pushing 2 teeth at one time. So you want to focus on just one tooth. And a lot of the old ones didn't say if they were for fine saws or coarse saws, just because it wasn't something that people worried about. Whereas nowadays, whenever you buy a new one, they'll say, this is for fine saws. It doesn't mean you can't use it on bigger saws. And one for coarse saws doesn't mean you can't use it on smaller saws as long as it fits the tooth size. And I do know some people who will take the hammer out of a coarse one and file it down to something a little smaller and then use it on a smaller saw. So size-wise, if you have a large one and a small one, then you're good for all the files you'll need. And the one I generally use, will probably take me down to like 16 PPI. And I'll use that all the way up to my 4 PPI rip saw. So that one will take me across most everything. It requires a little bit more force on the larger one because the hammer's a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, but oh well. So it's really a personal question because there's just so many of them out there. It wouldn't surprise me if there were literally hundreds of companies making them because I've seen so many different names. And I'll go to tool meets and there'll be a bucket of saw sets and there'll be, $3, $4, $5 a piece. And people are just getting rid of them. You don't see that everywhere, and if you're not going to a tool meet, then they're hard to find because it's a very specified tool. But in the tool working collecting groups, they're quite prevalent. Okay. Hope that answers your question. What's next, babe?
Let's see. Harold Schultz asks, using a rabbet plane, I'm assuming rabbet, is there a rebate plane?
Same thing, depends on which side of the pond you're from.
Oh, okay.
European English call it a rebate, and Americans call it a rabbit.
Okay. Well, it was spelled like rebate, and that threw me off.
Well, they're spelled.
And they spelled that.
Too.
Oh, okay.
It means the same thing.
What helps in keeping the shoulder square as you go down and not slowly leaning?
It means don't lean.
Lean
No,
on me.
honestly, that's the way to. It's one of those things that once your hand learns what vertical is with the plane, because what I'll do, what he's talking about here, grab out my moving Phillips.
You can't blame
You
that
didn't
on
see
me.
that. So we got my moving Philister here, and
Do you need help reaching something?
yes. I do, babe. Can you give me a hand? So what happens is you'll be going down the plane, you'll be going down the board, and slowly the plane starts to turn, and now you'll get this angled rabbit. And so keeping it vertical is, it's one of these things that you just learn over time, and your hands start to feel what is vertical. So usually I have fingers over here that are touching the board, and then I have fingers underneath that are touching the board. So just as the fence and depth stop would be here, my fingers are duplicating what the depth stop and the fence would be. And that gives me an idea if I'm twisting, because my fingers will give me feedback on the board of, hey, the board isn't quite at 90 degrees to this anymore. It means I'm probably leaning. And so it's one of those things you just keep an eye on, and the more you do it, the more you learn. So, yeah. Trying to think if there's anything specific to say other than don't lean. Yeah, I have known some people who will put a bigger fence on there, something that will reference more of the surface, but I haven't found that to help personally. And you can't put a bigger depth stop on there because the depth stop only connects at the final stage. So it's one of those things that you just keep an eye on it, put your finger on it to feel a little bit more, and slowly you'll learn what 90 degrees feels like. What's next?
Sorry, hang on.
I'll read it, Mom.
Okay, go for it. It's
Bryan Crosby asked, what sort of support would you use on a wall shelf that could support a cat jumping wall
onto it.
a cat jumping onto it?
So what type of support would I use that would support a shelf that would be capable of a cat jumping onto it?
Oh boy.
I would use a shelf support. I think you'd have to clarify that, because I mean, if it's a shelf support, it should have more than enough strength for a cat to jump on it.
Depends how big the cat is.
Is it very true? Are we talking Garfield or? Yeah, no. It really depends on the type. If you're looking like a floating shelf, then you're going to need a post or something that goes back into the studs of the wall. If you're looking at a bracket that goes underneath, well, just about any bracket should be able to handle that load. I guess I would have to know what type you're looking for, if it's something specific, but I would have a hard time understanding a shelf that wouldn't handle that. But yeah, sorry. And if I don't get to your question, or we're not quite making sense, feel free to send me an email.
We have
You close
lost
the
the
door all the way
birthday
now?
girl.
Or don't. You just walk away, that's fine. She does this to me all the time. I'll be down here in the shop working, and she'll come and say, Daddy, I got something to show you, and then walk away.
Well, are you coming or not?
Yes, I was just giving JJ his phone.
Well,
Oh,
I
okay.
did not even read that right that second.
What's next?
Oh. Okay,
Why
hang
does
on.
someone know my ideas?
Nicholas Espiritu asked, when doing a shiplaped back on casework, 5 to 6 inch wide boards, how much of a gap should I build in to allow for expansion and contraction?
That depends on the time of year.
Wait,
Expansion
time of
and
year.
contraction is something that is dependent on heat and moisture. The hotter it is and the more moisture that's in the air, the bigger the boards are. The drier it is and the cooler it is, the smaller the boards are. So if you're putting it like in here, the winter months are the coldest, and are the driest. And here the summer months are the most moist and hottest. So if I'm building it in the summer, I'm not going to put much of any gap in there at all. I mean, I might end up putting a couple cards. Actually, you know, for a 6 inch wide, 5 to 6 inch wide board, I don't think I'd put any gap in there if it were right at the peak of the summer. Because the expansion contraction, that's really not going to be that much. If I were doing it in the winter when everything has shrunk to its absolute smallest, I might put in a 1/16 of an inch, maybe less. Because the expansion, it depends on what type of board. Did he say? If it's going to be something like pine. Well, no, that's the joinery. Something like pine, you're going to have a lot more expansion contraction, in which case, you know, over a 6 inch wide board, you might have a 1/16 of an inch if it's inside work. If it's outside work, you might have as much as an 1/8 inch movement.
He's clarifying right now.
What's that?
Time of year right now.
Well, it depends on where you're at and what your local community is, because every place is a little bit different.
The time of year is tomorrow in Los Angeles, California.
Well, Los Angeles doesn't change temperature at all. You don't have to worry about movement. No, really, it's one of those things that it's people really overthink it. But if it's made of hardwood, if you have a full 1/16 inch of movement indoors, that's a lot of movement over 5 or 6 inches. So you rarely ever need more than a 1/16 of an inch. If you're doing with pine, maybe an 1/8 of an inch just to be absolutely safe, but even that would be a lot of movement to do an 1/8 of an inch. Now, if this were to be something that's going to be outside and actually in the rain, then you might have some significant movement.
It's beech.
But beech doesn't move much at all. Beech is a really solid wood. So if you put like one playing card slot in there in the winter and then hold it up tight in the summer, and you're good. Yeah, beech doesn't move much at all.
Need to go. Okay.
So yeah, it depends on. Look at your area and see, you know, when are you the most. When do you have the most humidity in your area? And if it's something that's intended to be inside and you live in an air-conditioned house and really the humidity is not going to change that much, then I probably wouldn't put any gap at all. I just put them up tight and leave it the way it is, because wood movement is something that people overthink. And when you're talking about a 5 to 6 inch wide board, there's not much movement there. Wood movement used to be a very big thing before air conditioning came around, and people would open their windows, and whatever temperature and heat and humidity was outside is what it is inside. That can cause boards to expand and contract a good bit more. But it's one of those things that a lot of people really worry about, but it's not as big a deal as it seems.
Okay, so we got clarification for Brian's question about the support of a wall shelf with the cat. So
Okay.
Brian was thinking wood only for support.
A triangular gusset? Are we talking like a shelf that's mounted to a wall? In which case, then I'd make a triangular gusset that is screwed into the wall and screwed into the shelf, or maybe a sliding dovetail into the shelf itself. Are we talking about side panels with pegs that it sits on? There's a lot of other things, but sorry. Gusset would be how I generally do a wall mount. There's a bunch of different ways of attaching the gusset to the wall. Like you can put a keyhole in the back of it, so you put a screw into the wall, and that keyhole then sits and locks down into the gusset. Or you can do pins into the stud, so you get like a 1/2 inch rod, drive it into the stud, and then you can put that rod into the back of your shelf so it can be floating and not have anything in there. Or you can put that into your gusset to hold it in place. There's lots of different methods.
All right. So I don't.
Feel free to send me a picture of your particular instance, and I'd be glad to take a look at it.
So I'm not sure if this is in follow-up to a comment you made earlier, but Viking Maker said, "What about the kids dropping the Harbor Freight tools?" Did you talk about dropping?
Yeah, doesn't matter because they're cheap enough that if they break,
Okay.
then I'll get a new one.
I didn't know if you had said something.
Most of their
different while I
tools
was trying to-
are old users, like the handyman stuff from the 50s and 60s that I really don't care about. They're cheap, old tools, and if they break, oh well, I got more of them. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Once Melody gets to the point where she wants to actually make something nice and she has the muscular strength to do it, then we may end up doing something a little bit more fancy and getting her some nicer tools. But until then, cheap stuff I don't mind her breaking. Especially like these saws. It's one of the things with kids, they're going to be bending the plates. And so if they bend this plate, oh well, it's a $5 saw. I'll go get one.
$5?
Yeah, $5.
Am I looking the right
What's
way
next?
at you, Dad?
Okay. So David Emmanuel Segundo Rubio.
Nice name.
I'm wondering if it's Rubio the second, but anyways. Can you manage to flatten large boards with a small hand plane, and how important is it for planing a board to be very flat in order not to cause problems when planing boards?
Okay, first off, yes, you can flatten a big board with a small plane. The nice thing about using a big plane, so if I grab my number 7 here, is if the board has a natural bow in it, this plane will sit across that bolt and it will touch here and it'll touch here. Where the iron's at, it won't touch. And so it won't plane anything there. But it will plane once it gets over to that high point, then the blade will take off the high point here and it'll take off the high point here. And the more you keep going across that board, it'll just hit the high points and won't hit the low points. And so having one of these takes all the guesswork out of it, because if it's set up well, it will only hit the high points. And it makes it a little bit easier to flatten a board that way. So if you have a small plane, it might actually ride the hill and valley. So it will still take out material at the bottom. And so if you're using a small plane, then you need something else to tell you where those high points are. And so if you use a straight edge, so you grab a straight edge and you put it across the board, and you mark where the high points are, then you take your small plane and you only hit the high points. Don't go anywhere else. And then once you've gotten rid of all those marks, you grab your straight edge again, you put it on there, and you make new marks. And then you only hit the high points. And you can keep doing that with just the small plane. You don't need the bigger plane. This just takes the guesswork out of it so you can kind of use it as its own straight edge. What was the second half of the question?
How important is it for planing boards to be very flat in order not to cause problems?
It depends on the application. If you're talking about large panels, you really don't need them to be terribly flat, because if you're using good joinery, the joinery will be what holds the boards flat, because wood moves and boards will go from being flat to not being flat to going flat again, and they'll go back and forth because wood is constantly changing. Especially if you're talking like a 24-inch wide by 3/4 inch wide board, 3/4 inch thick board, it's going to warp and change. But if you have good joinery like dovetails on the end that hold it in place, or a groove and dado that houses it, or a breadboard end that will keep it from warping, those are what are important. And so if the board warps a little bit and changes a little bit, then oh well, the joinery is there to keep it in line. So don't chase perfection. Head towards it. Perfection is a good thing to aspire to, but perfection is not a location; it is a direction. So if you're chasing perfection, you will never get there. So don't do that.
You already got perfection when you got me. Yeah, right. We both know that's not true.
Keep my mouth shut. Keep my mouth shut. Keep my mouth shut.
You said it was a moving target.
It is a moving target. What's next?
Dad Gamet asks, what is the oldest tool on the wall and what is the most nostalgic?
That's a hard question. Let's see. This coffin plane iron up here is from, if I had to put a date on it, I would say 1820 or so. But that's just the iron. I don't think the body is that old. It wouldn't surprise me if it was, but other than that, I have a few Stanleys from like 1890s. Most of my tools are from like around 1920. That's the best ones. What was the second half of the question?
Which is the most nostalgic?
Most nostalgic. I have to say, this compass plane. when I first got the channel going, and my channel size was like 5 or 10,000, one of the viewers, John, sent me a thing and said, "Hey, I've got a compass plane for you. Do you want it?" And I said, "Do I want it?" Yes. It was missing the iron. And I was like, "Well, if that's fine, I can go grab an iron." I've got an iron from a number 3, and it was missing the handle. Well, John's son actually made this handle from an old tote, and so he cut apart the tote from another plane and made this handle on there. And I just absolutely love that one of the viewers was kind enough to number one give me this plane, but then his son had the handle on there, and I just absolutely fell in love with that. So I got this and restored it, and it's one that I've painted blue, which any of my planes that are painted blue are tools that I have completely restored. So the paint and Japanning were ruined, and so I cleaned them all off, took it down to nothing, and redid them all. And so if I redo that and they're for my personal use, I paint them blue. But this one has a lot of good memories to it. I have a lot of other tools like that I pick them up and I think about it. That's one of the things I love about these is most all of my tools have some story about it. This is one that I met a friend online, and he came over to my house, and the two of us were doing some woodworking and bouncing some things back and forth, and he gave me a couple tools to restore, and I gave back to him. He said, "Oh, you can keep this one." And it's just a memory of a good friend. So that's one of the things I love, because every time I pick up the tool, I think about where I got it, the history that it's from, the people who've worked on it before, and a lot of them have names carved into the handle. I don't know who that is. Like I have one guy, L.A., who had this, had my number 5, and he has a name carved in the side, L.A., or initials. No idea who that is, but someone out there loved this plane, and now I love it. So kind of cool. What's next?
Here, Melda, do you want to read this one?
Okay. That is what it is asked. How do you remove plane tracks created by hand planes?
How do you remove plane tracks created by hand planes? First and foremost, you don't make them. If you don't make them, then you don't have to remove them. And like for my good smoothing planes, like the ones I have set up really fine, I don't round off the corners of my irons. I keep them square, but I'm taking such a fine shaving that you can't feel or see the tracks left from it. So I don't worry about that. Some people, Paul Sellers particularly, is really good at when he's sharpening his iron. He'll lift it up in the corner. He'll just do a couple strokes in this corner and a couple strokes in this corner, and just take off a little material in the corner so that it's flat on the bottom, but the two outside edges just round up a little bit, just removing that feathered edge. And so that's the other common way of doing it. But if you're taking a fine enough shaving, you really can't see the plane track, and so they disappear. If you have plane tracks that your smoothing plane is leaving, then you might want to come over with a card scraper and finish with that. And that's the way most of my woodworking finishes, with a scraped finish. Just feels a little bit more, feels natural and happier. So yeah, first off, don't make it. Adjust your blade, and then you can clean up with a card scraper or something of that nature. So, good question. What's next?
Joe R. wants to know, who is your favorite manufacturer of hand tools currently in operation, and who is your favorite that is no longer in business?
That's a hard one, because there are so many great companies, especially in the hand tool world. There's a lot of like mom and pop groups or just pop in the garage making some tools. DFM Toolworks makes the card scrapers that I use. He has several other tools he's coming out with, squares and things that are really cool. I'm loving his stuff. And his personality and the way he does things are great. I mean, like Blackburn Toolworks, I love his stuff. I think if I have to pick one company, so like someone who's not a single individual making things, I would probably have to pick Veritas. Veritas, I like their stuff. Yes, Lee Nielsen, and there's several others that are making really, really good tools, and that I just kind of like the ethos of Veritas. They don't just try to remake old things and make them a little bit better. They'll take things back to the drawing board and make something that's completely new, completely different. Does the same thing. It has a lot of the same functions because that's just how it's done. But they'll have a lot of new bells and whistles and things that go into them. And I like that innovation and that style. Giving a nod to the past, but willing to look at new things and try out new methods. So I really like that. What was the second half of the question?
Who's your favorite no longer in business?
Oh, Stanley, of course. No, actually, it's probably Atkins. Atkins saws. I really, really love Atkins saws. Not because they're great or they're amazing, but it is just their logo is incredible. Here, let me see if I can show you this.
Wow.
Focus. It's in focus. There we go. And the cool thing about their logo is not. Man, this is hard to do this way. There we go. Is not anything about the logo, but if I flip it upside down, where'd it go? Atkins saws then are my logo. That's why I like them.
That is amazing. That is amazing, Dad.
You like that?
I love it.
There's a lot of good old companies, but I think that's actually one that I like the most because there's something fun about it. And they make really, really good saws. Most of the time, I generally prefer those over most distance that I've held just because they seem to have a little bit better fit and feel. But personal preference. What's next?
Let's see. Bryan Fulmer asked, how do you sharpen the kids' tools? The same or less?
Less, far less. They most of the time they don't do a whole lot of planing, and if they're going to be using planes or spokeshaves, then I'm probably going to be giving them mine because I'll spend the time to sharpen it and make it easy for them. But with these saws, all the ones that they use have the hardened tips, so I don't worry about that too much and let them go to town on that. Their chisels I don't keep sharpened because they like to just bash on things. In particular, JJ likes to come down and try and pick the epoxy off the concrete. And so sharpening those, there's just no reason to it.
Yeah.
So I don't sharpen their stuff much of anything. But anytime that they're working the shop with me and actually making something with me, then that's when I'll let them use my tools when I'm right there with them. Especially spokeshaves. If you're working with a kid, spokeshaves are one of the best beginner tools because there's just something about it that comes to life when you're making shavings. It works so easily. Small hands can run it. You're working on a small space, so you don't need a lot of force. There's a lot of really cool little things you can make that are absolutely fun. So, yes. What's next?
All right. So Thomas Hunter says, I'm somewhat new to hand cutting my joinery and my saw technique is getting pretty decent, but my tenons still need some cleanup. Would you recommend a shoulder plane, a skews block plane, other?
Everyone's going to have a little bit different person. A good shoulder plane is a fantastic thing to have. Let's see, where is my, a good heavy bottom shoulder plane, something around 3/4 inch wide, will treat you really, really well. The problem is they are very expensive. They're just very, very expensive. If you find one under $100, buy it. And even the new ones, there are very few that are under 100 that are worth anything. Tay Tools has made one. I haven't had a chance to try it, so I'm not 100% sure on it. But some of the early reports I've been getting from other people are it's really, really good. And so he has one that's like a 3-in-1, so it has the long nose, or you can take the nose off and put on a bull nose, or you can use it as a chisel plane and get right up tight to things. So I want to get one of those and try it. But the nice thing about this is if you have a large tenon, so like you have a 3-inch wide tenon, you can use this to clean right up against the shoulder, so you can do the cheek of the tenon and clean right up against it. And then you can bring in your regular plane and plane out the rest of it, because now that you've gotten right up next to the surface, now the side has something it can slide on and clean it up. So with just a small shoulder plane, you can do most of everything else. The nice thing about a shoulder plane is it has a very low angle to it. So if you're actually going to be doing the shoulders, this will cut into it much easier than a higher angle plane will. So just my suggestion. What's next?
You want to read that one, sis?
Sure. Dad, your pen. I can't pronounce it correctly.
That's okay.
Asked, when are you sharing a vote? You need a vote.
What?
You need a boat.
When am I starting a boat?
I guess for your next project.
Actually, that is one of the things that's on my list. Long in the future, but I would like to build a little sailing skiff. I think that would be a lot of fun. Just like a 12-foot long sailing skiff. Take it out on the water. That would be a good time.
They're hilarious.
But we'll see. I've got a lot of other things I want to build. Got to finish an airplane one of these days.
I think it's very funny.
All right. Brian Crosby asked, do you have any videos about using and burnishing card scrapers?
Yes, I have quite a few videos on sharpening card scrapers. I have several videos on making card scrapers.
Didn't you do one live?
Yes, I did one live. I have at least 3 different videos on sharpening card scrapers.
Oh, my back.
And then I have one on making the burnisher for it. So yes, there are quite a few videos out there. If you're looking for a particular video, if you're ever wondering if I've done something, if you search in YouTube, wood by Wright, and then whatever the topic. So wood by Wright, sharpen card scraper, they will pop up. What's next?
Amen.
Hold on.
I'm a hold it.
You want to ask it?
Sure.
What is it, Mel?
Go ahead.
George
Ortiz.
Ortiz asked, what is a good spokeshave to buy that isn't too pricey, or an antique tool that needs restoration?
Restoration.
Restoration, what's that?
Spokeshaves are one of the things that I generally tell people go cheap. Most cheap spokeshaves will work relatively well, especially if you get them that look like the old Stanley 151s or Stanley 51D. Let me show you the ones with the tightening screws in the back. Back out a little bit. These will treat you very well. They'll have the screws in the back here, and there's a whole bunch of companies that make these really. You just can't go wrong with the design. You don't really have to worry about flattening the bed that much. I mean, most of them will come with a bed relatively flat, but if you spend a little bit of time cleaning this up, they'll work really well. And the nice thing about this is they're relatively easy to adjust and being able to switch them back and forth. Actually, I have on my suggested page, I believe I have a set from Amazon that it comes with 2 of these, one of them with a rounded bottom, one of them with a flat bottom, and it's $30 for the set. If I remember correctly, or it could be wildly off on that. It could be $30 a piece. But I don't remember. But if you go to Wood by, actually there's a link to it down below where my suggested tools. And there are a lot of really cheap spokeshaves out there will do fantastic work. And it's one of those things that once you get into it, you may want something with a little bit better fit and finish, something that feels nicer. But most of them will actually treat you really well. There isn't much to it, so don't worry about getting really nice. What's next?
We are caught up.
We are caught up on questions. Cool. So if anyone has anything, first off, I want to say thank you to Melody because she's 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
This is her birthday. And if you want to see her channels, there are links to both of her channels down below. She has one for woodworking and one that's just her having fun.
If you have little girls.
And if I didn't get to anyone's question, feel free to send me a message or an email, and I try and answer as many of those as I can. I try and do a Q&A about once a month, and then we'll go back into things. Next week, I'm not sure what we'll do. I've got a couple little projects I've been thinking would make a good live video. And one of these days I want to get my mother back in here and finish her boxes. So we'll see when that comes up. But maybe next week, who knows? We've got a lot of other things going in our life, so we don't know what's happening anytime soon. So. Cool. Any last minute questions? I can wrap it up.
Daddy?
Oh, Melody does.
What's that?
I just wanted to ask the viewers, do you guys have any questions for me? Because I would like to see the questions if you have any questions for me.
Andrew Davis just popped up a question. How many planes do you have, and how many do you need?
You only need one. Actually, you don't even need planes. You just need a chisel. Every tool in the shop is just a jig for holding a chisel. It's really kind of a thing. I actually have a couple videos where I've made things using only a chisel. I made a box with only a chisel from firewood. I went into the woods and chopped down a tree and made a stool using only a chisel. So yeah, that's all you need. Last count, I had 86 planes in the shop. So I don't have that many. Of the ones I use on my bench at any given time, I probably have 6 or so that I use all the time. But if I didn't have those, I would probably just have a number 4 or a number 5. You can do pretty much everything with either of those, just depending upon if you generally find yourself making bigger things, get a number 5. If you generally make yourself doing smaller things, then get a number 4. But either of those will treat you really well for most anything you need. Cool. Is that about it?
Dennis has a question for Melody. What is your favorite school subject?
There are lots of school subjects I like, but if I had to choose one, music.
Music?
Or dance.
I would never know why you like music.
Math is easy, but music and dance, they're fun. It's mainly my thing.
What's your thing?
That's what I'm all about.
Oh, and then Brian asked, what do you want to be when you grow up?
There's a few things I want to be when I grow up. For my start years in high school, I want to be a babysitter, and then I want to be, oh boy. Then I want to be a missionary teacher. I think that's it that I want to be.
I thought you wanted to be a nurse.
Maybe I'll be a nurse like Mom.
I thought you wanted to be a YouTuber.
I am a YouTuber. I started being a YouTuber when I was 6, Dad.
Cool. I think
Yeah,
that'll about
okay.
do it for this week.
Thank
So
you.
if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by.
I'll
And we'll have fun
shout
until
them
next
out right now.
So until then, have a wonderful day.
Everybody, bye.
Bye.
You got to hold the position, Melody.